Welcome to Lynnwood Election Watch 2013. I'm your host, Teresa Wippel from Lynnwood Today, and we are here with our continuing interviews with candidates for Lynnwood City Council. And we have Ruth Ross, who is running for position 3 on the City Council. Welcome to the program. Ruth, I would like to start by having you tell everybody a little bit more about yourself. And I know you've been in Lynnwood government before and have a long history. So why don't you just start by talking a little bit about that, and then we'll get on to some questions.
All right. I moved to Lynnwood in 1995 and was working for the City of Lynnwood as a code enforcement officer. And I worked there until I was elected to the Lynnwood City Council. Actually, the election was in 2001, and I took office in 2002. And I served for 8 years, and it has been a long stretch. I've worked for Lynnwood for a very long time and really enjoyed serving there. And since I've been off the council, I've gone back to school, got my master's degree in public administration, and I wrote 3 books.
Wow, I didn't even realize that. What were your books about?
My books are little cozy mysteries about 2 women, a mother and daughter, based on me and my mom, who solve mysteries. It's very fun.
That's great.
Yes, the 2 Widows Mystery Series is what it's called.
Well, we'll have to check that out. I don't think we've had a candidate yet who has that on their resume, so that's pretty nice.
Yes, it was very exciting, very fun to do, and I know they've been pretty well received.
Available on Amazon?
On Amazon,
yeah.
Yep.
Okay, very good. Okay. Well, so I'd like to start out by talking about an issue that, and you know, I don't know if we're going to, the trains will pick up, but we had to fess up in the last interview that we are actually doing these from Edmonds, which is why if you hear train whistles, that's why. Close to the trains, yeah. But it's actually a very good segue into my first question, which is you know, turning to the issue of the Link Light Rail coming into Lynnwood. I know that the City Council recently had voted to oppose the operations and maintenance satellite facility there, and there's certainly going to be a lot of transitions and impact on Lynnwood residents when that comes into town. So tell me your thoughts about how the city could best help residents with that issue.
Well, I think the hardest part about the whole Link Light Rail is that it's quite a ways in the future, and it's very difficult to know and prepare this far ahead for what might happen. I think that we have to keep our options open. I think that we need to look and continue to look at what community transit and Sound Transit are planning on doing. But it's such a far distance away that the best that we can do probably is observe what's happened down south and how people are adapting and how that is working, and hope that whatever issues are brought up from that experience will benefit Lynnwood and make it an easier transition for us. I think it's a great concept. I've always supported the idea, and I really hope that it's successful. And by the time we actually have light rail, I'll be able to have a senior citizens discount.
That's right. It's going to take a while.
Yeah. So I just think we have to be patient and optimistic and keep our eyes and ears open and really kind of study what's happened down in the south part of the community, because that's already there, and what impacts are happening there are going to really color what happens up here, I think.
And do you see some potential benefits by having it come to Lynnwood?
Well, I think anything that will improve transportation is going to be of a tremendous benefit to Lynnwood. We have our own issues with transportation, and we have so many people who have to commute daily just to get to their jobs, that I think that anything that will improve or allow people other options for transportation will be of a great benefit. As far as a huge facility to do repairs, you know, it's just going to depend on a lot of things. 20 years is a long time, and a lot of development could change between now and then. We've got the city center plan, and if that were to take hold and actually begin some development, it's going to change the nature of Lynnwood anyway. So it's going to be kind of hard to predict what to expect and so far in the future.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about the whole issue of you know, a city center and kind of Lynnwood's identity. You know, I've spoken with people over the last couple of weeks, just that conversation of, well, what is Lynnwood's identity, and where is the town center, and where do folks gather, and all of that. And it's hard for some people to really even pinpoint that. And
Yes,
what
it
do you
is.
see, especially with your long experience in city government? What do you see for the future of that kind of identity development for the city?
Well, I would like to see us become just a little more realistic about what Lynnwood represents to most people. I think that there are some very positive things that we could do with our reputation for being, one of the most powerful business-based revenue cities in the South County area. I mean, let's face it, you go to Lynnwood because you want to go to the mall. We have a wonderful mall, we have a wonderful surrounding area, so we should be focusing on that very positive aspect. I think that we have tried to deny that for a long time. We have tried to make Lynnwood something else. And instead of embracing what we really do offer, not just shopping, but also we have some incredible recreation activities for the citizens, especially in Lynnwood, with our new recreation center and our beautiful parks. But we should be willing to see ourselves for what we are instead of what we think we want other people to think we are. We've had a couple different go-rounds with that. So I do think that if we could embrace why people come to Lynnwood, and we like them spending their dollars in our mall and in our various shops. It's just a wonderful place to come to buy things. If you need it, we have it. And I tried to push that a couple different times, and I was not successful. But I do hope that if the city center does take off and we have some public gathering spaces that are not about shopping, that would be great. Right now we have a wonderful library, we have a wonderful rec center, but we do not have, to quote a former colleague of mine, it's hard, we don't really have a heart and we don't really have a skin. It's hard for people to know where Lynnwood ends and another community begins because we don't really have that identity yet. But we keep trying, and I think eventually we will embrace our consumerism and promote the fact that people like to come here to shop. I think that's a great idea. We'll see what happens with that.
Okay, that's an interesting concept. And that leads really well into another question, which is something else that I heard from some folks is kind of the way that small businesses feel about locating in Lynnwood, and there's been some feedback that they don't feel it's necessarily a friendly climate for small businesses to come into. And is that something that you've heard in the past? Is there a way to address that issue?
Well, I think there are a number of ways to address it, actually. We were Monday, I think it was Monday night, yes, must have been Monday night, I attended the council meeting, and one of the things that came up was the cumbersome and antiquated land use code that we have, and we have had for a very long time. I worked under that code. I know how it is. I know that it is not something that is particularly friendly to business and big and new development. I think that we owe it to our business community, small and large, to do something about our code. I also think we need to kind of look at our business license requirements. We may be able to flatten that system so that it's less complicated and less difficult. If we could do that, that would encourage business. And the other idea that I had a long time ago was to go down to the park and ride, basically, and just ask people where they work, because commuting takes a huge amount of effort and time for people. They spend upwards of an additional 2 hours a day just getting to and from work, because there are so many businesses that are in Seattle and so many people who live here or this direction. It's like we don't necessarily know who those businesses are and whether they're aware that, the toll that commuting takes on their employees, and the fact that if they were to relocate to our area, the prices are more reasonable, there's more amenities, and people would not have to take that additional time out of their day, every single day, to deal with trying to get into Seattle and dealing with the traffic or dealing with, transportation, all those things. So there are ways that we need to become more attractive to businesses, small and large. But I think a lot of it is we have not looked at the codes. We have not done a big picture look at those kinds of things and the ways that we can encourage businesses to come, make it easier for them and make it more pleasant for people to build development and start a business and have a home business. There's a number of ways that we can do that.
Okay. And One thing that I have heard some folks, it just keeps coming up, an issue that I know you got because of the time frame that you were on the council, red light cameras.
Oh, yes, our favorite.
It seems to maybe die down a little bit, but, on the other hand, every once in a while we'll hear somebody mention it.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about kind of
Oh,
short,
of
long
course
term?
I do.
Okay.
Well, a couple of things. First, when we were approached about the red light cameras, we were approached as a safety issue. The number of people who were running red lights was an issue. Trying to get a handle on, it's particularly certain areas where people would, 3, 4, 5 cars would go through after the light had changed, which is not safe in any way. And we went ahead with the project, and there has been a lot of negativity, and I think I know why. First of all, I think that the light there at 36th, where the convention center is, where people are turning, either going onto the freeway or turning onto 196th, I would probably propose that we remove that red light camera, because there is no oncoming traffic, and it is difficult and unfair for people to be coming right off that freeway and making that turn without any oncoming traffic. Why would I need to, come to a complete stop or whatever? I don't believe that we should avoid the law. I think if we don't like the law, we should change the law. But I do think that one is kind of seen as a little bit of a trap. Mm-hmm. And we have a couple places where we have that were considered speed traps, and we don't need that reputation. I do think the ones in the schools are particularly important, however, because I do think people do not realize how fast they're going when they approach a school zone. Yeah. And it really does bring you pretty quickly to a reasonable speed, especially when there are children present. The lights are flashing, everybody's saying, okay, it's time to pay attention now, because you can't trust the little kid not to jump out in front of your car. You just can't. Right. I have a 2.5-year-old granddaughter. I'm learning many lessons about what children will do without thinking. So I think they're very important. I would be willing to discuss some of the others, but a very pat answer is people would quit running red lights. We wouldn't have to have the cameras. Mm-hmm. And as soon as they quit paying for themselves, I'd be the first one to sign on the dotted line to get rid of them. Mm-hmm. But we do have to be aware that if it wasn't an issue, we would never have even considered having them. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate that we needed the revenue. It's fortunate that the revenue was there, but those cameras were designed for safety, and the revenues were not designed for ongoing expenses. It just unfortunately worked out that way. I do think that it needs to be revisited, but there are definite advantages as well as disadvantages to the cameras.
And speaking of, revenue, of course, Lynnwood, as well as just about every other city, has really been struggling with that issue. And what kinds of things do you think, after being off the council for a while, if you're elected into the position, what kinds of things would you prioritize in terms of trying to kind of get the budget back into shape?
Well, we simply have got to diversify our revenues, and I talked about this for 8 years while I was on the council, and I would continue to talk about it, because we have so heavily dependent on sales tax revenue. When people stop buying, Lynnwood doesn't have any money. Mm-hmm. So if we have to find some ways to break out of that mold, and I think the unfortunate taxes that had to be put into place during the economic downturn are the same as all the other cities have. They're not new. They're new taxes to Lynnwood, but the concepts are not new. But we're surrounded by communities that have had to deal with revenue hits for a long time, between what happened with some of the initiatives and some of the revenue stabilization. All those things have impacted all the cities. Lynnwood was very affluent for a long time and didn't really learn how to be anything else. So Lynnwood needs to learn how to thrive within its means. I do think that there are some things we can do. I think there's a lot of out of the box, which is very cliche, but it is the concept that a lot of cities around the country have done very innovative things to expand their revenue base, and that's where Lynnwood needs to go. So it's going to require innovation, it's going to require dedication, it's going to require a huge, big picture looking at, and going outside of our own little town and realizing that other people have good ideas that we may want to try to incorporate. But it's a big and broad picture, and I think everything should be on the table. How do we generate revenue and get around all the limitations that are placed on cities as far as generating revenue, which there are a lot of them, and come up with ways that Lynnwood can stabilize its revenue and increase its revenue and not be so dependent on sales tax.
And I think somebody else had mentioned that, again, I know Edmonds and some other cities have this problem too, but just things like routine street maintenance.
Exactly. The bridge collapse is a perfect example of what happens with deferred maintenance. You have to be willing to make that a priority. And we have not done that in Lynnwood, and we need to do that. We need to reconstruct our overlay programs. But we have millions, and I know Bill Franz, bless his heart, brought us how many millions of infrastructure that was a few years back. It's a huge investment. Lynnwood in particular, because traffic is our number one issue, we have a responsibility to make sure that we keep our infrastructure where it needs to be and continue to improve our streets and our layouts and all of the things that will help make traffic more reasonable. Again, it's a huge undertaking. It will take a long time. It will take a lot of thought, but we don't have the choice. We've got to find a way to fund our infrastructure improvements and maintenance. We just cannot. You just can't let it go. People need that.
Shifting gears just a little bit, another kind of hot button issue it seems to be, or at least one that's been in the news, has been the state auditor's office finding related to the golf course. My understanding is there'll be a consultant's report out fairly soon about that. But what does the city need to do to ensure that everything's in order with the golf course? And again, another thing that you would probably be dealing with when you come into office.
Yes, the golf course is another topic that is long-lived. I don't pretend to have the answers for these things. I haven't had the information that the current council members have gotten. But my simple statement about the golf course is we need to learn how to make it turn a profit, or we need to find someone who can. It's a lovely idea to say, okay, well, we won't do this anymore, we'll make it into a big park, and that's a lovely idea. Though I don't think it's a reasonable idea at this point in time. I think that we have invested so much into this that we have got to find a way to make it turn a profit. And if it can't, then we'll start talking about what else we're going to do with it. But it's I don't want to use the term ridiculous because that's impolite, but it seems ridiculous that we have not been able to do this in however many years we've had the golf course. And if we have to do something different, I don't really want to pour any more money into it until it can start paying for itself. We were told when we started allowing beer and wine on the golf course that would turn it around, and it did not. And I was opposed to that idea, and I would very much like to see, if we can't do it, then we need to find someone who can.
It is really perplexing. I know that the statistics have shown that people just aren't playing golf like they used to, and
Right.
there may be economic reasons for that. It's just expensive,
Mm-hmm.
and there are fewer golf courses now. And of course, Mountain Lake Terrace just they're turning their golf course back into a park.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it does seem to be somewhat of a trend, but it is. Lynnwood's course is really pretty.
It's a beautiful course, and unfortunately, because it's a golf course, and because of the culture of golf, I would say the vast majority of people in Lynnwood have never set foot on that golf course. And that's a shame, because it is beautiful. It's a beautiful piece of property. And if that's what they decide, or we decide what we want to do with it, then we've got to figure out how to make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
So.
And talking about just kind of educating folks about what the city has and the amenities, and just in general communicating with citizens. What is your opinion, and again, it's probably easier now, you've been away from it for a little while,
Yes.
but what is your opinion about how the city is or is not engaging with its residents and kind of effectively communicating with them about what's going on?
That's one of the greatest challenges of small town city government, and particularly in Lynnwood, because we have a gigantic population that is transitory. People moving in and out. People come here for a little while, and they go somewhere else. And it's kind of like it's almost like a starter community, but not even quite there yet. And I don't know if it's just because of the proximity of and the convenience of it. I'm not really sure why that culture is what has developed in Lynnwood. And it's very difficult to engage people because they do not necessarily consider Lynnwood their home. It's more of a place where they are right now. And I don't, again, it's we have what we would like to have, and we have what we really have. And sometimes you do need to accept some of the limitations that come along with that. I think the city has tried very hard, and the city has done a number of programs. Lynnwood University, an attempt to reach out to some of the non-English speaking citizens in Lynnwood, and that also is a challenge because we're not sure how to exactly reach out to some of the communities that are there. And they do, I lived in an apartment for a long time, and you could always kind of tell the waves as they came in by the cooking smells. Everything always smelled so good. And it's like, okay, so this is, and here are the Russian groups that's coming in because I can smell the borscht or, whatever. It does tend to be very fluid and very transitory, and it is a challenge for Lynnwood, a particularly difficult challenge for Lynnwood, and I just think we have to keep trying and try different ideas, and maybe and hopefully we will stumble on something that actually works, and people can become more engaged. It's sad to me because I love to remind my fellow council members 98% of the people in Lynnwood don't have any idea who you are. Just let's not get too full of ourselves now, because really we're not doing that good of a job. So we do have to work, and we have to continue to just try everything we can to see if we can make a difference. And we chip away at it a little at a time. Mm-hmm. So,
well, I think that's probably true in many towns the size of Lynnwood.
Yes.
That people do not know who their council members are, and I think it's the same in the other communities that I'm involved with as well. And you raise an interesting point about the kind of the diversity of the population, and in fact, somebody had shared with me that in the latest U.S. Census that the population is becoming older, and also there's more people of color, and also just the fact that the median household income is lower than Snohomish County as a whole, about $18,000 a year lower.
Yes.
So in terms of the well, let's just start with the senior citizens first. That's a big group of people who have special needs, and what kinds of things can the city do to help with that? Is there certain kinds of housing that should be advocated for?
Well, I do think that we have missed the ball as far as having diversified housing stock. We have a lot of apartments, and we have a lot of single-family homes, and we have not embraced some of the other concepts of housing, cottage-type developments, small lot subdivisions, and Good Shepherd Church, which is run by Pastor Boyer, is a fine example of low-income senior housing that they decided they were going to build, and they jumped through all the hoops and actually got it constructed. I do think there are a lot of ideas that we have not explored as far as housing for seniors, because they do have it is a different kind of need, and that's where not having that town center, not having that heart, makes it more difficult, because things are so scattered around the services that people need, the amenities, the grocery stores, the dry cleaning. I mean, it is just kind of everywhere and not cohesive. So it's going to be an interesting challenge to figure out the best places that we can put like senior living, so that people can walk, or they can, come together and travel together to the locations they need to. It's hard. My mother lives with me, and she has to go so many places just to get the doctor and get a few groceries, and it's like once her driving becomes an issue, that is going to be impossible. It's just going to be extremely difficult to get her where she needs to go, because it is so spread out. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of possibilities. I think we just we need to open the doors to some of the different types of housing that has been explored and been used successfully other places. We pretty much stuck to, the 8,400 square foot lot with a big house on it is what you do in Lynnwood. Mm-hmm. So it's time. It's time to think about some other possibilities. And the mixed use is always interesting. I like the idea of that as well, with housing, above, some businesses below. There's a lot of things we could do. We just have always kind of been a little hesitant about doing it. Mm-hmm. So when you have a limited concept of what you will allow in your town, then that's what you get. When I first came to Lynnwood, I said, we don't even have art galleries in the code. How can you expect to attract an art gallery when you don't even have it in the code? Or that's really my point. You can't expect to generate this kind of housing when it's not even listed anywhere. Or is so restrictive you can't do it.
Right. Okay, well, we've got about another minute and a half, and I want to give you an opportunity to kind of do a summary, but just two very quick answers to questions. So what do you think is the Lynnwood's greatest strength and its greatest weakness?
Well, its greatest strength, of course, is its citizens. We have the people who do live in Lynnwood and have stayed in Lynnwood, or, even the new people in Lynnwood, they're amazing. And also, we have an incredible staff at the city. We have very dedicated people. So the people of Lynnwood, of course, and I know that's kind of a pat answer, but it is the truth. Mm-hmm. We have terrific citizens. We have terrific employees. Our greatest weakness, I think, is, again, lack of cohesion. We just have never really gelled as far as what we would like our city to be, how we would like it to be, how we can address the main issues that have come up. So we need to pull together. We need to have out-of-the-box thinking. We need to have leadership that's not afraid to admit they don't know everything. And then we need to just get to work.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. So now here's your chance to leave the voters with one thing you'd like them to remember when they get their ballots, and also share any, if there's a website or another way people can learn more about you.
I don't have a website. I do have, well, actually, I don't have a campaign website. Then there's not a whole lot on any of that. But if you're interested in my books,
I was going to say they could go to your book.
I do have www.twowidows.com. So yes, you can go to that. I think for me, I've been away from the city, and I have always wanted to serve. I jokingly say that my mother saved lives and my father saved souls. He was a minister, my mother was a nurse. So it's kind of what we do. And I do like that idea. So that's why I want to be on the Lynnwood City Council. I want to serve the community again.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for taking the
Thank
time
you.
and speaking with us.
This
and
was
I wish
fun.
you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Buy those books.